My name is Lauren Hale, and I'm 29 years old. The morning I drove back to my grandfather's cabin, the sky had that pale, forgiving blue that makes you believe in do-overs. I told myself I needed quiet, just one weekend to breathe, to touch the things he touched, to figure out how to carry a legacy with two hands that still shake. Grandpa Walt Gaines never said goodbye. He said, lock up. It was his way of loving, practical, specific, a promise you could keep. He taught me how to ease the boat onto the lift without scraping the hull, how to sand deck railings with the grain, how to read the wind just by the ripple on the east cove. He used to tap the door frame and say, houses remember. I didn't understand until he was gone. 8 months after his funeral, the cabin was legally mine, not the family's, mine. He was explicit, and I told myself that clarity would protect me. The drive up is 2 hours in one lifetime. Pines thicken. The lake flashes between trunks like a secret blinking. Gravel pops under the tires. I pull in and feel it, just a subtle wrongness, like walking into a room where a conversation stops. There's bass thrumming from inside. Laughter that doesn't know this house. A voice yells, front door's open, come in. I don't come in. My key is in my palm, hot and stupid. The knob turns without it. The living room is a collage of people I've never met. Wet towels have conquered the backs of Grandpa's chairs. 6 bodies, maybe 7. Flip-flops, a ring of beer bottles, the sour burn of weed. On the handmade table, the one Walt carved, sanded, oiled with patience you could smell, someone has gouged a heart and 2 initials. A guy in swim trunks opens his arms like we're old friends. You must be Kayla's sister. We were just about to hit the water. My name is Lauren, I say. It comes out steady. This is my house. He laughs, easy and cheap. Nah, Kayla said it's family-owned. She texted me the code. I change the locks, my voice goes thinner. There is no code. He shifts, uncertainty puckering his forehead. Well, we already unpacked. Behind him, a woman calls, Kayla's on the way. The name lands like a coin dropped down a well, pinging every rung on the way to the water. Kayla, my little sister. 27, all shine and noise. She says legacy, like it's a filter you throw on a photo to make it look earned. I step in, because this is what claiming looks like. Shoes on the entry mat, keys in the ceramic dish. Grandpa turned on the lathe, eyes on the walls that remember me. Walt's fishing rods lean in their corner, tips trembling when the base upshifts. Someone's used his vintage tackle box as a cooler, meltwater sloshing over cedar dividers, the metal hinge streaked with rust. I feel an embarrassment so clean it almost sparkles, strangers making themselves at home in the one place that still feels like mine. I need everyone to pack up, I say, now. It becomes a debate in 3 acts: incredulity, entitlement, and volume. I walk calmly into the kitchen, where my grandfather's knives still live in their block, and I start unloading cabinets, plates into boxes. Walt's coffee mug, the one with the chipped rim, wrapped in a dish towel like a bone that needs setting. I keep my hands moving so my voice can be soft. You have to leave. Kayla arrives with the drama of a summer storm, door flung wide, sunglasses like armor. Lauren, you're being intense. Her tone is a reprimand dressed as concern. Mom and Dad gave me a key months ago. We agreed the cabin is for everyone. We didn't agree, I say. Grandpa would want it shared. She gestures broadly, like she's christening a ship. You're hoarding. Hoarding. The word clatters on the hardwood. For a second I see Grandpa in the doorway, sun on his neck, eyes laughing at the audacity of it all. He trusted me with a thing that needs care more than company. But Kayla knows exactly which memory to weaponize. The Sunday cookouts, Grandma Eileen's potato salad, Dad snoring on the porch. She spools it out like fairy lights while strangers drip lake water onto the rug. I step into the hall and call Ethan. He answers on the second ring. You there? There are people in the house, I whisper. Kayla's people. A breath on the line, then the voice I fell for, calm as level water. Okay, you're the owner. You can ask them to leave. I did. Then do it again and call me right back. I'm on my way. Ethan Ward does not raise his voice. He builds it like a dock, plank by plank, something you can walk on. We met 3 years ago, and he is the rare person who knows how to help without making it about himself. His ex, Sabrina Cole, never liked me. She and Kayla found each other online, glittering in the algorithmic sun. I don't know what they talk about, but every time Sabrina's name pops up under Kayla's posts, I feel watched. Back in the living room, I pick up 2 bottles and drop them into a trash bag. The man in trunk says, "Seriously? We drove 3 hours." I nod. "I'm sorry for your drive. You're still leaving." Kayla plants herself in Grandpa's chair like claiming a throne. "You can't kick out my friends. They're not your guests." I keep my eyes on the carved table, the bite mark of a blade in waltz grain. They're trespassing. The scene sours. Someone mutters about power trips. Another jokes about calling the sheriff. I almost laugh. Do they think that word frightens me in my own home? I call the non-emergency number anyway because clean lines help. A record, a report, a piece of paper that says I am not crazy. By the time the officer arrives, I've put 2 of Walt's rods back into their sleeves and found a stray lighter under the couch. The officer is matter of fact. The deed has my name. The decision has my weight. One by one, the strangers file out, trailing apologies they don't mean. Kayla lingers, finger tracing the gouged heart on the table. "You're making everyone hate you," she says low. "For what? A house?" "For him." I tap the wood gently. "For what he asked me to do." Her mouth twists. "Sabrina says you like control more than people. You proved her point." There it is, a name flicked at me like a cigarette. I inhale the smoke of it and let it go. Sabrina doesn't get a vote. Mom and Dad do. Mom had a spare key from when she cleaned for Grandpa, I say. She gave it to you without asking me. That ends tonight. Kayla stands. For a second, despite everything, I see the kid who fell asleep in the canoe, sun hat sliding down her face, trusting me to paddle us home. Then she looks at the security camera in the corner and scoffs. "You really put up cameras? God, Lauren." The officer escorts her out after the guests. The door closes. The bass has stopped. The silence is not peace. It's a ringing after a fire alarm. I walk the rooms like a medic after a storm. Broken window in the boathouse, patched with duct tape. Cigarette burns on the deck rail. A scorched circle in the grass where someone set a bonfire too close to the pines. The worst is the tackle box. Cedar swollen, salt lines like veins. I set it open in the sun and whisper, "I'm sorry," as if wood can forgive. My phone lights up. Mom. "Lauren," she starts, voice already scolding, "this pettiness has to stop. Your grandfather wanted family together." "He wanted the cabin cared for," I say. "Share, then care," she counters. "Let Kayla have weekends. You work weekdays anyway." Dad takes the phone long enough to say, "Compromise, kiddo," like a man offering a bandage to someone with a broken bone. I tell them I'll be changing the locks again. I do not ask permission. Night comes like a curtain drop. Ethan arrives with groceries and a locksmith number. He doesn't tell me I did the right thing. He hands me a sandwich, opens windows to let the weed out, and takes measurements of the door frames. When he finds the upstairs sash that never quite catches, he seals it with a temporary brace. "Whoever comes back," he says, "is going to have to work for it." I sit in Grandpa's chair after we're done, the moon laying a silver seam down the water. The house is breathing differently now, the way a ribcage lifts once a tight bandage is cut. I run my fingers over the gouged initials on the table. Tomorrow, I'll call a restorer. Tomorrow, I'll check Kayla's posts and see what stories she's selling to the internet. Tomorrow, I'll start the work of making the lines we all should have honored visible. But tonight, I listen for the old language of this place, the soft slap of wave on dock, the creak in the east wall when the wind shifts, the whisper of pines counting years. We're too young to understand. "Houses remember," Walt used to say. I press my palm flat to the table, feeling for his patience under the scar. "So do I tell him. So do I." By morning, the cabin smells like itself again. Pine, lake, old paper. I brew coffee in Walt's dented percolator and stand at the sink, watching the cove blush with first light. My chest feels hollowed out, like somebody scooped the middle and left the rind. Ethan leaves early. He has a site visit an hour away, but not before setting the new deadbolts, labeling a box of spare hardware and writing "Call Restorer Table" on a sticky note he parks right over the gouged heart. "Eat," he says, pressing a second sandwich into my hand like a prescription. Then he kisses my temple and goes. He doesn't say be strong. He doesn't say anything that would make my strength feel like a performance. I tell myself I'll only check Kayla's socials long enough to block her from tagging the location. But curiosity and dread are twin engines, and I let them run. Her profile is a museum of borrowed pride. Sunset selfies on the dock with captions like, "Home will always be by the water." A slow motion video of friends cannonballing off the boathouse roof. A highlight reel called Lake House Life, decorated with sparkle emojis and the word "ours" in looping script. She tags the town. She geotags the cove. She stands on the deck, chin lifted, and calls it a family heirloom. Me, I'm in those years-old background shots like a watermark, the filter tried and failed to erase. I scroll, dead calm, 4 months of weekends, nearly everyone after Walt's funeral. A story I didn't know I was in. Then, screenshots. A friend of a friend DMs me a group chat where Kayla writes, "My cabin is open this weekend. $200 if you clean up after yourselves." My hands go cold. My scalp prickles like I'm standing under a transformer. The lie isn't just public, it's profitable. I call the neighbors because cowardice thrives in silence and I'm done feeding it. The Stanleys next door are kind, the sort of people who bring casseroles and rake extra leaves from the shared ditch. Mrs. Stanley's voice is cautious at first, careful not to choose sides. Then I apologize and tell her I didn't know. Relief floods her sentences like someone opening a valve. "Oh, honey," she says, "we've been so worried about you. It was loud, late, cars everywhere, headlights sweeping our bedroom like a lighthouse. I called your grandfather's number twice, out of habit. Well, I'm glad you're here." 17 voicemails are waiting on the landline. Walt refused to cancel because phones keep records in ways people don't. Upset voices, exhausted ones. A man describing a bonfire too close to the trees, the heat like a hand on his fence. I write everything down. Dates, times, license plate numbers, when they offer them. The ledger is not for vengeance, it's for clarity. But clarity has teeth. As Mom calls again, and I let it go to voicemail. Then Dad. I don't listen. The letter finds me by accident. I'm hunting for wood glue in the desk, and instead I find Walt's lawyer's correspondence, dog-eared and rubber-banded. In it, there's a page in Walt's careful block print, answering the question of whether to put the cabin in a family trust. Too many cooks spoil the broth, he's copied into the margin, then underneath in his own words, and too many owners ruin a property. Choose a steward. 1. I read it twice. The page warms in my hands like a living thing, like a benediction that arrived on time even though it's months late. I take a photo for my files and slide the original back where it slept, because some proofs deserve to rest in their birthplace. By lunch, I've filed a maintenance ticket with a window company, emailed 2 conservators about the table, and swapped the camera batteries. Then I make a mistake. I read comments. Kayla's newest post is a carousel of last night's party, but the caption is the real show. Some people forget where they came from. Grandpa wanted this place for family. The replies are a hive. Sabrina Cole has the first comment, heartbroken face emoji chain. Then, hate to see gatekeeping over memories. Houses are for people, not paperwork. Underneath that, a dozen hearts, a chorus of say it louder. Sabrina and I have never traded more than politeness in person. Still, I feel the humiliation pinch. Ethan's ex piping judgment into my life like an IV. I don't engage. You don't throw words into a fire and expect them to come out unburned. At 2 p.m, the door upstairs thunks. The sound is wrong. A flat palm on an unlocked mouth. I take the stairs quietly and find the north dormer window cracked open. That stubborn sash Walt always meant to replace. The screen is pried up, a neat crescent bend where a hand pressed and leverage did the rest. Kayla is already inside, standing in the hall like she owns the afternoon light. She wears the face she uses with customer service agents. "We need to talk." My legs hum like I've run somewhere. "You climbed in. You changed the locks without telling anybody." She shrugs. "The window was warped when we were kids. I remembered." "We were children then," I say. "Now it's trespassing." God, Lauren, words. She says it like words are a petty hobby of mine. We are family. Family can't trespass. That isn't how the law works. She tries for soft. "You're hurting everyone." Then for sharp. Sabrina says, "I don't care what Sabrina says," I cut in. And that's a mistake, because care is exactly what I'm doing. I'm bleeding attention all over a person who thrives on it. Kayla stalks around the upstairs landing as if cataloging what to claim. She opens the linen closet and drags her fingers over stacks of clean towels, that anonymous entitlement like static. Give me a key. No. Then schedule it. Weekends for me. You barely come up. I'm here now. I hold up my phone. And if you don't leave, I'm calling the police. You wouldn't, she says, shocked in a way that tells me she's always counted on my shame. But shame is a flimsy dam against a flood. I make the call, hands steady because I'm done pretending this is a misunderstanding. The officer from last night arrives with a second, and the conversation is not a conversation. Property, ownership, rights. Kayla's face curdles when she realizes the men won't be seduced by nostalgia. They walk her out. When the cruiser's taillights disappear, the house sags like an animal set down after being carried too far. That night, Dad texts, "We saw your little stunt. Cruel." Then Mom, "You broke your grandmother's heart." I write phone call with Grandma on tomorrow's list. I think of Eileen as she was, before grief made her porous. Toast and honey, crossword puzzles finished in ink, a cackle that snuck up on her and delighted her every time. I don't know what Kayla told her. I just know repetition turns any lie into an heirloom. Ethan gets home late and calls to check in. "I hate that you had to go through that again," he says. "Do you want me there tonight?" "I'm okay," I say, shading the truth. "I found a letter from Walt to his lawyer. He wrote, 'Choose a steward, 1. He's quiet a beat then. Then you're doing your job. Sometimes the villain is just the adult." He breathes. "Document everything. Keep it boring." Sometimes the villain is just the adult. He breathes. "Document everything. Keep it boring." Boring. I crave boring like oxygen. Instead, the next day, the cabin becomes an evidence board. I inventory damage with a bad detective's thoroughness. Deck burns, dock graffiti, boathouse window, carved table, tackle box, ruined. I print screenshots. I label a folder incidents and another repairs. I draft a cease and desist letter template to review with counsel. My hands shake only once, when I'm logging the neighbor voicemails and I hear an old man, voice tired and careful, say, "I knew Walt. He wouldn't have wanted the trees set alight." In the afternoon, I call Mom to ask her not to give out keys again. She answers already in motion, like she's been rehearsing for a week. "You have made this so ugly, Lauren. Your grandfather wanted laughter at that lake. He wanted his granddaughters to bring their friends." "He wanted the cabin preserved," I say. "I have his words, Mom, to his lawyer. He wrote them down." "And what does paper know about love?" she snaps. Then the softer weapon. "I can't believe you called the police on your own sister." "I called the police to escort a trespasser off my property." "You don't hear yourself," she says, and hangs up. I do hear myself. That's the problem. The sentences are solid and lonely. I rake the needles from the path to the dock at sunset, sweat drying cold on my skin. When the rake catches on something, I kneel and find a bottle cap pressed into the dirt. I hold it up to the last light and think about all the small ways a place is disrespected before it comes apart. Not fire, not theft, just carelessness practiced until it's custom. Inside, I open Walt's journals. I flip to random entries and listen to him. He writes like he speaks, clear, unadorned, oddly tender. April 12. Replace 2 planks on the west edge. Loons back early. May 27th. Lauren came up, sanded until her shoulders hurt. Kayla stopped by, said mosquitoes are a hate crime. June 3rd. If you love a thing, you keep it boring, regular, tended. I press my fingertips to the ink, not to conjure him. Ghosts don't come for the living who are doing their job, but to borrow his steadiness. Then I close the book and stack it with the others, spine to spine like bodies keeping each other warm. After midnight, my phone buzzes on the nightstand. A number I don't recognize. 3 texts in a row, a drive-by guilt parade. This place has too much love to be locked away. Would want it open. You can't fence a lake, Lauren. No signature, but the phrasing has Kayla's breathlessness and Sabrina's performative ache. I block the number and write the text down anyway. Records matter. Before sleep takes me, I walk the perimeter with a flashlight. Beam catching spider silk and the reflective eyes of a raccoon near the compost bin. The air smells like damp wood and possibility, the way it did when I was 13 and convinced adolescence was a season you could wade out of if you knew the right angle of approach. At the window, I test each latch twice. Not fear, ritual. When I finally lie down, the house exhales around me. Somewhere a board settles, a polite cough. I think about the word Kayla hates, steward, and try it on in my head until it fits. I think about Sabrina's comment, houses are for people, not paperwork, and how the people I respect most would answer, houses are for the ones who show up when nobody's watching. On my nightstand, Walt's letter waits, patient as a lighthouse. In the morning, I'll call a lawyer. Tonight, I let the dark do what it's always done here, hold everything that can't be solved, and soften its edges until I can pick it up again tomorrow. The first time I saw Kayla on the security feed, I thought my mind was playing tricks. It was 11:47 p.m., a weekday. I was back at my apartment, the city hum outside my window. The phone buzzed. Motion detected, Lakeside Camera 3. When I opened the app, the grainy infrared image showed a silhouette in a hoodie climbing the porch rail. A ladder leaned against the upstairs dormer, the same one she'd used before. I zoomed in. Even through night vision static, I recognized the ponytail. My sister's arrogance has a shape. She was trying the window again. My heart didn't race this time. It hardened, steady. I took screenshots, timestamps, sent them to my lawyer. Then I called Ethan. "Don't go there," he said immediately. "She's baiting you." "I'm not, but I need to document it." He sighed. "You already did. That's what adults do. They document, not detonate." He's right. Still, when the alert chimed again 3 nights later, different angle, different attempt, I felt the same dull ache in my stomach. She wasn't alone this time. A tall man, unfamiliar, scoping the doorframe with a flashlight. They were casing it like a job site. My grandfather's haven turned crime scene. The third time was daylight, a crowbar glinting in full sun, Kayla yanking at the back door, frustrated like a child with a stubborn toy. I recorded that too. The clips sit in my drive like evidence of something worse than trespass. Delusion with an audience. I wanted to believe it would stop, that family shame had limits. I was wrong, because the fourth attempt broke me. It was a Tuesday. I was on my lunch break, eating a salad I didn't taste. Another alert. I tapped the feed and froze. There they were, my parents, standing on the porch with Kayla, and a locksmith. Mom's face was red, her gestures frantic. Dad's voice carried even through the speaker. "We own this property. My father-in-law built it for family." The locksmith looked uncertain, holding his tools like a shield. Mom started crying, the kind of sob that used to make teachers let her skip the line at parent pickup. Our cruel daughter locked us out of our own memories. I could see Dad waving a folder, probably the old photocopy of the will, conveniently cropped. The locksmith hesitated, asked for documentation. Mom's voice cracked, high and practiced. "It's our family's, not hers." I called the company myself, shaking. "That's my property. My name's on the deed. They're attempting to break in." The technician backed away on the feed like someone pulling his hand off a hot stove. He left. Dad slammed his hand against the door, shouting something the mic didn't catch. Then, silence. Watching my own parents try to invade the house my grandfather trusted me to protect. That's the kind of heartbreak no therapist prepares you for. That night, Ethan held me until I stopped trembling. "They're not thinking straight," he murmured. "They've convinced themselves this is about love, but it's about control." I didn't reply, because love and control have always looked the same in my family. The family campaign. The fallout spread like oil. At my cousin's wedding 2 weeks later, the air smelled of champagne and intervention. I was ambushed in the foyer by my Aunt Claire, glass in hand, sympathy lacquered over judgment. "Sweetheart," she cooed, "we're all worried. You're destroying what's left of family unity. Your grandpa would be heartbroken." "Grandpa left a will," I said evenly. "He made a choice." She shook her head, drunk on righteousness. "He meant it symbolically. You're twisting it." Behind her, 2 cousins nodded like background singers. The whispers had made it to the extended branch. Lauren the greedy, the cold, the one who forgot blood. Even Grandma Eileen called, her voice thin and trembling. "Baby, why are you doing this? Kayla says you've locked everyone out. Your grandpa, he wouldn't have wanted that." I bit my cheek hard enough to taste metal. "Grandma, she's lying. They've damaged the cabin, burned things, broken windows, tried to—" "I don't want to hear it," she was crying. "Just fix it, please. Let the family heal at the lake." When the call ended, I sat for a long time staring at the photo of Walt and me on the dock. I was maybe 9, missing teeth, holding a fishing pole too big for my hands. He's laughing, his laugh that started in his chest and ended in the world. The caption in my head has never changed. He chose me. But my family chose the narrative where I'm the villain. The rumors. At work, things started to tilt. My manager pulled me aside one afternoon. "Lauren, we got a weird Google review about you." My stomach sank before he even showed me. A 1-star comment under my company's listing. "Unprofessional, greedy, and cruel to family. Don't trust her with anything valuable." Posted by user S. Cole. Sabrina, Ethan's ex. He looked mortified when I told him. "She's doing this to protect Kayla," he said, though his voice carried guilt, like he should have seen it coming. "She thinks she's fighting for fairness." "No," I said, "she's fighting for attention." The harassment grew roots. Random DMs from strangers calling me heartless. Comments under old photos. "Money can't buy family. Hope your lake freezes over." It wasn't just invasion anymore. It was narrative warfare. The note. The final straw wasn't digital. It was tangible, invasive, personal. 6 weeks after the locksmith incident, I drove up to the cabin to do spring maintenance. I expected quiet. Instead, I found dishes in the sink, towels on the floor, a faint citrus perfume in the bathroom. Someone had been here. No signs of forced entry, just that old upstairs window, open again. I searched every room. No one. Just evidence. A half-empty bottle of wine, 2 glasses, crumbs on the counter, footprints in the dust by the workbench. And in the guest bedroom, a folded piece of paper on the pillow. My hands shook as I opened it. This place has too much love to be locked away. You would want everyone to feel welcome here. It wasn't signed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Rounded letters, the same looping Y in everybody I'd seen on birthday cards my whole life. Kayla. I sank onto the bed, the note trembling between my fingers. It wasn't just trespassing anymore. It was desecration disguised as sentiment. She'd invoked Walt's initial like a holy name. I called her, straight to voicemail. So I texted, "You broke in again. I found your note." The typing bubble appeared, disappeared, then came through. "You can't own memories, Lauren. Grandpa's spirit is bigger than your locks." I stared at the words until they blurred. Spirit, bigger, locks. She was turning his death into her excuse. That night, I installed reinforced window latches and motion sensors. When I finally collapsed in Walt's old chair, exhaustion replaced rage. The lake outside was mirror still, moonlight slicing across it like truth cutting through spin. I thought of Grandpa's voice. "If you love something, protect it quietly. Don't announce, just act." So I did. I called a local contractor to fortify the boathouse. I scheduled the installation of stronger cameras. I arranged to stay weekends to deter trespass. But as I stared at that note on the table, I knew this wasn't about wood, locks, or land. It was about legacy, how a story changes when people start rewriting it for comfort. The next morning, I burned the note in the fire pit. The paper curled, blackening, words breaking into ash. For a moment, the smoke smelled sweet, like lemon and memory. When the last fragment disintegrated, I whispered, "No one rewrites him, not even you." The lake stayed silent, but the cabin, old and listening, seemed to exhale in agreement. Grief has a strange aftertaste, part salt, part metal, part clarity. By the time spring thickened into summer, I stopped crying when I thought of Walt. Instead, I started listening to him in the ways he left behind. The journals, the diagrams, the quiet logic in every nail he'd driven. I spent those weeks alone at the cabin, and for the first time since the inheritance, I wasn't guarding it from intruders. I was restoring it. Walt's records. One rainy afternoon, I pulled a heavy ledger from the bottom drawer of his workshop. Inside were columns. Dates, initials, repairs, visits. A lifetime of notes. Under 2015-2024, the entries were methodical. Lauren, 218 nights. Projects, maintenance, solo visits. Kayla, 15 nights, family events, short stays. It wasn't just data, it was evidence of care, written by a man who believed that love was proven in hours, not words. On the last page, a simple line, "If they ever argue, let the record speak for itself." I sat there, fingertips pressed to the ink, feeling both vindicated and unbearably sad. He'd known, he'd seen this coming. Building what they tried to break. I began rebuilding the things they'd ruined. The dock first. Rot had crept into the planks near the waterline where Kayla's bonfires had singed the edge. I followed Walt's old instructions, sanding and sealing, humming the old country tune he used to whistle off-key. Neighbors stopped by sometimes. Mr. Stanley brought lemonade and stories. Your grandpa helped me fix that same dock 15 years back, he said, handing me a spare wrench. Didn't charge me a dime. Said good wood repays kindness. It made me smile, the kind of smile that aches more than it comforts. Each fix felt like stitching something back into place. The railing, the deck, the flower beds Kayla's friends trampled. I replanted the native garden Walt once tended, carefully choosing the same species from his notes: purple coneflower, columbine, bee balm. By July, the cabin looked less like a battlefield and more like a promise being kept. The family trust proposal. Then came the solution. A text from Mom. Family meeting, no arguments this time. I almost ignored it, but ignoring them just gave them more stage time in absentia. So I drove into town and met them at a diner that smelled like syrup and stale coffee. Kayla was already there, sitting between our parents like the favored child in a custody hearing. She had papers spread across the table, formal, stamped, full of self-importance. It's simple, she began, like a sales rep rehearsing a pitch. We put the cabin into a family trust. Everyone gets equal rights and access. Decisions made by vote. That way, no one feels excluded. Dad nodded, encouraging. Mom dabbed her eyes with a napkin. I stayed silent long enough for them to squirm. Then I said no. Kayla laughed, brittle. You can't say no to family. I just did. Lauren, you're letting this tear everyone apart, Mom pleaded. Can't you see how much pain you're causing? I set the folder I'd brought on the table and slid it across. Inside were photos of the damage, receipts for repairs, neighbor complaints, and, the trump card, Walt's handwritten letter. Choose a steward. 1. Kayla's jaw tightened. He didn't mean it like that. He wrote it to his lawyer, I said quietly. He meant every word. Dad leaned back, exasperated. We're talking about family, not contracts. Grandpa didn't confuse the two, I replied. You did. The silence that followed was loud enough to fill the diner. Then Kayla pushed her chair back hard enough to screech against the tile. You're unbelievable, she hissed. You care more about boards and paperwork than about your own sister. I almost said something cruel. Instead, I stood, dropped a 20 on the table, and said, That cabin is the only place in this family that hasn't lied. Then I walked out. The funeral. 2 weeks later, Grandma Eileen died. The call came early morning, Mom's voice small and fragile. It was her heart, she said. She went in her sleep. Grief has many forms, but this one landed like a quiet, blunt stone. I didn't realize until the funeral that I'd already been mourning Grandma long before she passed. The real her, the woman who used to tell me, family isn't who loves loudest, it's who shows up when it matters. At the service, Kayla gave a eulogy that was pure theater. She painted Grandma as the glue of the family, the keeper of lake memories. Then, near the end, she said it. Grandma always wished we could all gather again at the lake house, like when Grandpa was alive, before walls and locks divided us. People nodded. A few clapped softly. I felt my throat close. She'd managed to turn a eulogy into an indictment. Afterward, Aunt Claire cornered me by the exit. You could fix all this, you know, she said. One gesture, one weekend where everyone's welcome. Isn't your peace worth that? I looked her dead in the eye. Peace built on disrespect doesn't last. Then I walked out under the gray sky and drove straight to the cabin. A private promise. That night, rain drummed on the roof, and I sat by the window with one of Walt's journals open. The entry was dated 5 years ago. Kayla visited last weekend, asked when we'd get Wi-Fi, said the mosquitoes should be exterminated. I understand not everyone finds peace in the same silence, but I worry about what happens when people stop respecting it. I read that line over and over until I cried, not because it was sad, but because it was honest. I closed the journal, turned off my phone, and lit the fireplace. I decided then that no matter how much noise the family made, I would not bend again. Boundaries weren't cruelty, they were continuity. And if keeping that continuity made me the villain in their story, then fine. I'd play the villain, the quiet one who fixes what they break and guards what they forget. Because the truth is, I wasn't fighting over property anymore. I was fighting for a legacy written in wood grain and patience. The one man who'd ever looked at me and seen responsibility as something sacred. So I opened a blank notebook, dated the first page, and wrote the title in firm ink. The Caretaker's Ledger. Below it, my first entry. Tonight I reaffirm the promise Walt trusted me to keep. To protect this cabin, this place, this peace, even if it means protecting it from my own family. The pen left a groove in the paper. I didn't smooth it out. I wanted it to stay, like a scar you earn for doing the right thing. 6 months. That's how long it took for the storm to die down. Not because they forgave me. No, forgiveness never came, but because even outrage gets tired eventually. After the funeral, the family's noise faded into static. No more surprise visits, no more locksmiths, no more crying voicemails about healing the family. Just silence, heavy, deliberate, and oddly merciful. The cease and desist letter my lawyer sent to Kayla had been clear. Any future entry onto the property will result in legal action. It was formal, firm, and entirely unromantic. That's what boundaries look like in writing. Ugly, necessary, final. And it worked. The cameras stayed quiet. The locks held. For the first time since Walt's death, the cabin was only mine again. The price of boundaries. Peace came with a strange flavor, half relief, half loneliness. Mom stopped calling. Dad unfriended me on Facebook like a teenager in a feud. The rest of the family followed suit, pretending silence was moral high ground. Even Grandma's old friends looked at me differently at church, like I'd stolen something invisible. Kayla, of course, took her campaign public before retreating into martyrdom. She posted one final photo, a childhood shot of us two on the dock, arms around each other, faces sunburned and innocent. The caption read, "Family is forever, unless someone decides a deed matters more than blood." Hundreds of likes, dozens of comments about greed, forgiveness, and how you can't take memories to the grave. I didn't reply. I'd learned that silence, used correctly, is its own kind of truth. Reclaiming the cabin. When I returned to the lake in late August, the air had softened. Cicadas buzzed like electricity in the trees, and the dock boards glowed silver in the morning light. The cabin smelled of cedar and lemon oil, the way Walt kept it. For weeks, I worked through the list he'd left behind, the one I'd found folded inside an old tackle box. Refinish the deck railing, replace the screen door hinge, oil the porch swing, repaint the boathouse shutters. Deep green, not that city teal. Each checkmark felt like stitching myself back into something ancient and trustworthy. At night, I read his journals, not for guidance anymore, but for company. Walt had chronicled everything. Bird migrations, rainfall totals, which screws rusted fastest in which corners. His care was both obsessive and holy, and slowly that care became mine. I built new routines, coffee at dawn on the deck, walks along the shoreline before work calls, journaling each evening. I called it my stewardship log. Entry by entry, I started to understand what Walt meant when he said, "Houses remember." They don't remember who laughs the loudest. They remember who stays to fix the damage after everyone else leaves. Ethan and the quiet. Ethan came up on weekends when he could. We talked less about the family now and more about what we were building, something slower, steadier. He never asked me to choose between peace and people again. He understood that for me, those had become the same thing. One night we sat on the dock, watching the reflection of the porch lights ripple across the water. He reached over and touched my hand. "You know," he said quietly, "you didn't lose your family. You just lost the illusion that they were one." That hurt, but it also freed something in me. Later, when he left for a week-long work trip, I found myself alone in the stillness, and didn't mind. The solitude no longer felt like exile. It felt like ownership, the kind you earn in bone and breath. The legacy continues. By fall, the wildflowers I planted bloomed again. Purple, red, gold, turning the cabin into the same riot of color I remembered from childhood. I walked barefoot through the yard, the earth cool under my feet, and thought about how Walt had trusted me to understand beauty without needing to claim it. I updated my will, left instructions that the cabin should never be shared ownership, only passed to someone who demonstrates care, not claims it. I wrote a letter, sealed it in a waterproof box, and placed it in the drawer with Walt's journals. It begins simply. "If you're reading this, the cabin is yours now. Protect it the way it protected me. Don't waste your life trying to please people who only visit when it's convenient." Letting go. The first frost came early that year. The lake mist rose like breath, and the air felt like a clean page. I sat in Walt's chair with a blanket around my shoulders, sipping coffee that tasted faintly of smoke from the fireplace. On the table beside me sat my own ledger, half full, repairs, journal entries, costs, reflections. Under tonight's date, I wrote, "It's quiet now. They still think I'm selfish. Maybe I am. But if protecting peace is selfish, then so was Walt, and I'd rather inherit his silence than their noise." Outside, a loon called, a single, echoing note that felt like an answer. I stood, open in the door, and stepped onto the porch. The cold bit at my cheeks, but it didn't feel punishing. The lake shimmered, pale and still, reflecting the sky like a mirror that remembered better days. And for the first time, I understood what Grandpa meant by lock up. He didn't mean close the door. He meant guard what's sacred. So I did. I locked the door behind me, not in fear, but in gratitude. The cabin had stopped being a battlefield. It was home again. A home that remembered who loved it enough to fight for it. And that's how I know Walt would be proud.